The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. The Alchemist is a parable like the Celestine Prophecy. If you haven't seen my video on the Celestine Prophecy, I'll leave a link in the description box below. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. The Alchemist is a parable much like the Celestine Prophecy. For me, the story of Santiago provided a lesson that is very important in that life is about the journey, not the destination. It's also about finding what Paulo refers to as your personal legend, other people refer to as your life purpose. The story begins with a young man named Santiago, who had studied to be a priest and decided that he would prefer to travel around. So he decided to be a shepherd and move around the country with his flock. Santiago was quite fortunate that he had a father who supported his dream and agreed with him changing the direction of his life and to go on to be a shepherd. One evening, Santiago is asleep in an old ruined church, and he finds that he's having a recurring dream, and that there is a treasure to be found for him in the pyramids in Egypt. At first, Santiago decides that it really isn't anything, and as he's had this dream before, he begins to wonder a bit more about whether he should pursue this particular dream or find out what does it mean. So he heads towards a village named Tarifa and remembers that there is a gypsy there who interprets dreams. So he decides to go and visit her. The gypsy tells him that he can find the pyramids in Egypt and he will find his treasure. Santiago asks her how he's supposed to get to Egypt, as it's quite expensive to travel, and she tells him it isn't her place to tell him how to get there. She has just interpreted the dream. But the offer that she does make him is that rather than charging him for the reading, she would like 1/10 of the treasure when he finds it. Santiago agrees to the deal. As he heads off with his sheep and he's considering what the gypsy has told him and trying to figure out how to get to Egypt, he comes across a gentleman named Melchizedek. And he and Melchizedek speak for a while. He tells him that for 1/10 of his sheep, he will tell Santiago how to find his treasure. Santiago agrees, and Melchizedek also talks to him about personal legends and gives him an example of how some people do move forward with their personal legends and work towards it, but sometimes they give up just before they're about to reach their goal. It's an important lesson to remember that if you're following something that you know in your heart you're meant to do, that truly brings you joy and fills you with a sense of purpose, then it's important to remember that road may not always be easy, and you'll find people who help you along the path. You need to be mindful of the signs and omens that you get during your life, so it's important to observe and pay attention, and don't give up just before you're about to reach your goal. And don't give up because the road may not be easy. The universe may want to know that this is what you're truly committed to moving forward with and reaching your goal. Melchizedek also gives Santiago 2 stones, Urim and Thummim. He tells Santiago that if he is stuck about trying to make a choice in which path to go, he can use the stones for a yes and no answer. But he encourages Santiago to use observation, be mindful of the omens, and make choices for himself. Santiago decides to sell his sheep, and he gets enough money to travel to Tangier, Africa. Of course, when he arrives, he realizes that he doesn't speak the language of the country. He is also exposed to people who worship different than he does. Again, it's an important lesson to learn because as you travel to different countries and different areas, you will be exposed to people who think and do things differently, and that's okay. Unfortunately for Santiago, because he didn't know the language, he is taken advantage of and a thief steals all of his money. So now he has found himself in a country where he doesn't know the language, he doesn't have a way to get back home, and he certainly isn't close to Egypt to find a treasure. At this point, someone else may have given up. But in the story, Santiago comes across a crystal shop and he offers his services to the gentleman and he learns the language and he stays at that shop for 11 months and 9 days. And I point that out because sometimes when people believe they are moving towards their personal legend or life purpose, they expect it to be quick and they expect it to be easy. And that just isn't how it works. There are little steps that certainly fall in place, but if it's your true life purpose, your true personal legend, then you're in it for the long-term goal, and it's going to take time. Santiago decides to leave the crystal shop where he's made a big difference for the owner, but he feels that it's time to carry on and move forward with his own goal of trying to get to the pyramids. So he joins a caravan that's on its way to an oasis. During that journey, he meets an Englishman who is on his way to meet an alchemist. And they make the connection because of the two stones that Melchizedek had given Santiago. The Englishman explains that he's very eager to meet the alchemist and wanting to learn from him. On page 114, we have an example of synchronicity. Santiago has met the alchemist. It's not I the wind spoke about, it's the other foreigner, the Englishman. He's the one that's looking for you. He has other things to do first, but he's on the right track. He's begun to understand the desert. And what about me? When a person really desires something, all the universe conspires to help that person to realize his dream, said the alchemist, echoing the words of the old king. The boy understood. Another person was there to help him towards his personal legend. That example points out that be mindful of the people that you meet and the messages that they give you. And the reference to understanding the desert is about the observations that you see in your everyday world. In other words, be aware of your surroundings. Take a look at where you're walking or driving, the people you meet, and the different signs that nature provides. It's also important to remember, and I have already mentioned this, the road forward is not always the easy path. Sometimes the universe will put blocks and obstacles in your way, and it's up to you to decide, is that goal that you're moving towards truly important enough for you to try and find a way around that block, around that obstacle, or do you just give up because it may be a bit challenging, or maybe you feel like you don't currently have the support to get there? In the end, the decision is always up to you. And it's important to consider, if you give up now, what if it was just before you were about to reach your goal? So weigh things out carefully because the choice and the decisions are always yours to make. Santiago does finally get to the pyramids, and unfortunately, what happens is that he is robbed yet again. The thief tells him that he had a recurring dream about a fortune in Spain, and all he had to dig was at this ruined old church. The thief also tells him that he wasn't stupid enough to follow some dream and try and find a treasure. At that point, the light goes off for Santiago and he realizes where the treasure can be found. So, spoiler alert. Our story ends with Santiago deciding to return to Spain. And he now has connections and a new language so that his business can grow and thrive. He returns to Spain and digs up the treasure at the church where he was first sleeping and thinking about the recurring dream. He goes to pay the gypsy the 1/10 that he had promised her. So the lessons in the story are about your personal legend, that it takes time and it isn't a straight line, that the detours and that extra time give you the skills and the important information that you need to be successful when you reach that goal. Don't give up just because the road is difficult or challenging. Follow your dreams and pay attention to the signs and the people who are there to support you. Sometimes struggles are the universe's way of finding out whether you're truly committed to your goal and your life purpose. The bonus features. The Alchemist bonus features to the copy that I have. It includes a reader's guide, which is great if you have people that you're involved in a book club with and you want to take a deeper look at the novel and story itself. There's also a beautiful map, hopefully that comes out, that you can follow Santiago's journey with him. It also includes this beautiful drawing that includes other titles by Paulo and the purpose of the stories. So the Alchemist is listed as wisdom. The Valkyries is about hope. And 11 Minutes is about love. I haven't read any of his other works, but I'll definitely be checking out my public library to find out if they have more of the titles of his works. If you've watched some of my other videos, then you know I recommend checking your public library for new authors and new titles. It's a great way to give a new book and a new genre a try out. And as you're reading it, if you decide that it's something you'd be interested in and reading again over time, then you know whether it's going to be a good purchase or not. As I read books like The Alchemist and the Celestine Prophecy, I like to keep notes in little journals like this one. And it says, when it rains, look for rainbows. When it's dark, look for stars. It's a great way to keep track of the information that I've come across and points to remember and go back over time and review the different information. The Alchemist is the only work that I've read by Paulo Coelho. If you've read any of his other books, please leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of them and what you found useful about the information. If you enjoyed the content of this video or found it helpful or useful, please be sure to click on the like button. Also, if you're interested in bookish content or nature videos, be sure to give Ghost a little tickle and turn on the notification bell so you know when I upload content that may be of interest to you. Until next time, happy reading!